Thank you for that. Look, bluntly, to me, refusing to answer a hypothetical when there is clear and concrete previous history raises some concerns for me. I think Chris Wray has done an outstanding job as FBI director at avoiding political pressure. And although he was chosen by President Trump, he's being driven out so that he can be replaced. My perception, I've not yet met with Mr. Patel, by a loyalist who has publicly said he will do what the president asks him. Given that Attorney General Barr was asked to go find evidence of election interference and improprieties, went and looked for the evidence and said, I can't find any, and was then dismissed, I'm just going to ask you one last time. Can you clarify for me that in following ethics and the law, you'd be willing to resign if ordered to do something improper?
Senator, I wouldn't work at a law firm. I wouldn't be a prosecutor. I wouldn't be attorney general if anyone asked me to do something improper.
This may look like a routine confirmation exchange, but it's actually a stress test of how much political power the justice system can absorb before it breaks. What's really being tested here is whether the nation's top law enforcement office answers to law or to the White House. This raises broader questions about how democratic institutions survive when loyalty begins to outweigh independence. In this video, we'll break down how this hearing reveals a deeper struggle over who truly controls the machinery of American justice.
Senator Coons.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, Attorney General Bondi, and to your family and supporters. Thank you for your service, and I look forward to our conversation today. I have a simple three-factor test when considering the executive branch nominees before us. Do you have the qualifications and experience to do the job, policy views to do the job in the best interest of the American people, and the character and integrity to conduct your job, and yours in particular, with the independence that the role requires? You demonstrably have the relevant experience. I understand we will not see eye to eye on some or even many policies, but we had a constructive conversation last week about our shared interest in fighting the opioid epidemic, countering human trafficking, criminal justice reform, and supporting law enforcement. But I need to know that you share a core value, ensuring the Department of Justice remains free from partisan or political influence, in particular by the White House. So I look forward to our discussion about that today. As Attorney General, if confirmed, who would be your client?
My oath would be to support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America. The people of America would be my client. And it is also my job to advise the president. My client are the people of America.
A simple question of constitutional interpretation. Is President-elect Trump eligible to run for another term as president in 2028?
No, Senator, not unless they change the Constitution.
Thank you. One of the concerns I've raised with you is safeguarding the Department of Justice's independence in the face of some promises on the campaign trail by then-candidate Trump that he would use the department to target his political adversaries, or that he might interfere with prosecution. What would you do if your career DOJ prosecutors came to you with a case to prosecute, grounded in the facts and law, but the White House directs you to drop the case?
Senator, if I thought that would happen, I would not be sitting here today. That will not happen, will not happen. Every case will be prosecuted based on the facts and the law that is applied in good faith, period. Politics have got to be taken out of the system.
I agree with you.
This department has been weaponized for years and years and years,
but let
and
me,
it has
if
to
I
stop.
Might, thank you. Let me, if I might, Madam Attorney General, refer you back to Senator Durbin's opening comments about previous attorneys general, our former colleague, Jeff Sessions, Bill Barr. I don't think it's credible to say that it may never happen that the president-elect would direct an unethical or illegal act. I think both of those attorneys general found themselves crosswise with the then president by doing things he didn't welcome or approve of. Just answer the question for me, if you would. I know you may not expect it. I know you wouldn't have accepted this nomination if you thought it possible. But let's imagine that once again, President-elect Trump issues a directive or order to you or to the FBI director that is outside the boundaries of ethics or law. What will you do?
Senator, I will never speak on a hypothetical, especially one saying that the president would do something illegal. What I can tell you is my duty, if confirmed as the Attorney General, will be to the Constitution and the United States of America. And the most important oath, part of that oath that I will take, are the last four words, so help me God.
Given the importance of that oath, I hope you can understand the importance of repeated questions from some of us about the importance of having independence in the Department of Justice. It has a long tradition of independent special prosecutors, especially to handle high-profile or often political cases. If you got credible evidence of a criminal violation by a White House official, including even the president, would you bring in a special prosecutor?
Senator, that's a hypothetical. I can tell you what I do know is special prosecutors have been abused in the past on both sides. We have seen that for many, many years. They have cost the taxpayers countless dollars, countless. And I will look at each situation on a case-by-case basis and consult the appropriate career ethics officials within the department to make that decision.
Attorney General, do you think special counsels need to be confirmed by the Senate?
I will follow the law and I will consult with the appropriate ethics officials regarding the law. Right now, they do not need to be Senate confirmed, of course.
But you did sign an 11th Circuit brief arguing that they should be.
I will follow the law, Senator. That's why I said that.
Understood, but I was just getting to the clarity about the difference between a
Absolutely.
position you've advocated and what the current law is. Thank you for that. Look, bluntly, to me, refusing to answer a hypothetical when there is clear and concrete previous history raises some concerns for me. I think Chris Wray has done an outstanding job as FBI director at avoiding political pressure. And although he was chosen by President Trump, he's being driven out so that he can be replaced. My perception, I've not yet met with Mr. Patel, by a loyalist who has publicly said he will do what the president asks him. Given that Attorney General Barr was asked to go find evidence of election interference and improprieties, went and looked for the evidence and said, I can't find any, and was then dismissed, I'm just going to ask you one last time. Can you clarify for me that in following ethics and the law, you'd be willing to resign if ordered to do something improper?
Senator, I wouldn't work at a law firm. I wouldn't be a prosecutor. I wouldn't be attorney general if anyone asked me to do something improper and I felt I had to carry that out. Of course, I would not do that. That's one of the main things you learn when you're a young prosecutor is to do the right thing. And I believe that has continued with me throughout my very long career.
As we discussed, protecting American invention and innovation, American intellectual property, is a real concern of mine and of several others on this committee. I look forward to talking with you about that pressing concern. But the most important question I had for you today is whether you will be willing and able to stand up to politicization and interference in the Department of Justice. And I look forward to further clarification from you about the specifics of that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator.
Senator Cruz would be next, but he's not here, so I call on Senator Kennedy.
Just moments ago, in that charged exchange between Senator Chris Coons and Attorney General nominee Pam Bondi, the entire room seemed to narrow around one deceptively simple question. Who exactly does the Attorney General serve? Coons pressed with the weight of history behind him, invoking the ghosts of past administrations, the uneasy legacy of independence tested and sometimes bent. And Bondi answered with words that, on their surface, sounded reassuring, that her client would be the Constitution, that the people of the United States would be her true obligation, that the law and the facts would guide every prosecution. But beneath those carefully chosen phrases, something deeper and more complicated was unfolding. A quiet struggle over the very soul of American justice. When Bondi stated plainly that President-elect Trump would not be eligible to seek another term unless the Constitution were changed, it was more than a legal clarification. It was a reminder that, in theory, the rule of law still stands above any one person, no matter how powerful. In a single sentence, she affirmed a bedrock principle of the American Republic, that even the highest office is bound by written limits. Yet moments later, when Coons pushed beyond theory into the uncomfortable territory of what might happen if those limits were challenged, the certainty in the room began to fray. Hypotheticals were declined, direct lines were avoided, and the tension between principle and political reality became impossible to ignore. This hearing was never really about one future election or one hypothetical order. It was about whether the Department of Justice, an institution meant to stand apart from raw political power, can truly remain independent when that power presses in from the outside. Coons was not inventing these concerns out of thin air. He was speaking from recent memory, from a record that includes attorneys general who were asked to do things they believed were wrong, who resisted, and who paid a price for that resistance. When he referenced Jeff Sessions and Bill Barr, he was reminding everyone that this is not abstract. This is history, still warm, still unresolved. Bondi, for her part, spoke with the confidence of someone who has spent a lifetime inside the system. She spoke of facts and law, of good faith and professional judgment. She spoke of an agency that, in her view, had been weaponized, of a need to remove politics from prosecutions. Those words carry enormous weight because they echo a broader narrative now coursing through American politics. The idea that justice itself has been pulled into partisan conflict, that institutions meant to be neutral have become tools in a wider struggle for power. Whether one agrees with that assessment or not, its impact is undeniable. It shapes how millions of Americans see their government, their courts, and even their own neighbors. And this is where the hearing took on its deeper meaning. Coons was not only asking what Bondi would do, he was asking whether the system has the strength to hold when the pressure rises. Would a future attorney general stand firm if told to set aside a case grounded in evidence? Would she insist on independence if loyalty were demanded instead? Bondi said she would. She said she would never carry out something improper. She said her oath would come first. Those are the right words. But in a democracy built on checks and balances, words are only the beginning. The exchange over special prosecutors revealed another fault line. Bondi acknowledged that these mechanisms have been controversial, costly, and, in her view, misused. Yet they exist for a reason: to create distance between power and accountability when the two collide. When Coons asked whether such a tool would be used if credible evidence pointed toward the highest levels of government, the answer was careful, measured, and ultimately unresolved. It would be considered. It would be reviewed. It would be decided case by case. In that ambiguity lies both flexibility and risk. What unfolded in this hearing room reflects a nation wrestling with its own contradictions. Americans want justice that is blind, fair, and rooted in evidence. They also live in a moment of deep distrust, where every decision is filtered through suspicion of motive and allegiance. And Bondi's insistence that politics must be removed from prosecutions speaks to a desire for neutrality. Coons's insistence on hypothetical clarity speaks to a fear that neutrality may not survive when tested. And so we are left with a portrait of an institution at a crossroads. The Department of Justice is not just another agency. It is the keeper of the nation's legal conscience, the place where power meets restraint. When its independence is questioned, the stability of the entire system is at stake. The founders understood this. That is why they wrote a constitution meant to outlast any single leader. That is why they created oaths that bind public servants not to people, but to principles. In this moment, as cameras capture every pause and every carefully framed answer, the country is watching not only what is said, but what is implied. Trust in government is not restored by declarations alone. It is built slowly and painfully through actions that prove the law applies to everyone. From the smallest case to the most powerful office, the promise of justice depends on the courage to say no when the law is pushed aside. The exchange between Chris Coons and Pam Bondi will fade from the headlines, but the questions it raised will not. They will follow every investigation, every prosecution, every decision made behind closed doors. They will shape how Americans judge their leaders and how history will judge this era. At the end of the day, democracy does not survive on loyalty to individuals. It survives on loyalty to rules, to institutions, and to the idea that no one is above them. That is the real story written between the lines of this hearing. A story about power and restraint, about fear and responsibility, about a nation still struggling to live up to its own ideals. If you believe those ideals are worth defending, if you believe transparency and accountability still matter, then your voice matters too. Stay informed, stay engaged, and subscribe to Liberty Report USA to support our work in exposing the truth.